right, so for you personally, what is hard about authenticity?
That's a good question.
For me personally, being vulnerable, because sometimes people can't handle it because you're too real, and also sometimes people will or people can weaponize it against you.
Yeah, man.
The truth that you're telling.
Yeah, that's true.
So you have to be wise again and figuring out who you're going to discuss what.
Sometimes when we hear when we hear what he said, like you brought up exaggeration, diminishments, just like code switching can be like that's a real thing, but it can be exact. But sometimes people hear that and say, nah. It's like, no, that's real.
Yeah.
That's authentic.
Yes. Yeah.
The idea is, I was telling someone the other day that I feel like people who are overly aggressive are not authentic. They're hurt. They're the barking dog with the tail that's wagging. They're like, my owner beat me or didn't feed me right, and I don't trust humans. You know what I mean? But I just think we shouldn't overreact to vulnerability. What else? What is personally difficult for you?
People want to be liked. When you're authentic self, you're presenting, you're being vulnerable, you're laying it all out. Take it or leave it. And we've been conditioned to want to be liked for much of our lives. We have social media platforms that are built off of being liked. But I find it interesting that social media is a place where people tend to be the most inauthentic.
Right.
So true.
Yeah.
I think for me personally, there is fear attached to it. The fear is of responsibility. I think instinctively I know, whether it be circumstantial or otherwise, instinctively I know if I show up as my authentic self, there's a real weight I have to carry because of that. Right? So the fear tells me, don't do that, bro, because you don't want that. You know what I mean? And so I think that if I'm being completely honest, that's the thing that I've been trying to attack. It's like, why not just take on the responsibility? Or who said it was your responsibility? Because that's a valid question too.
Yeah.
I think for me, it's unnatural. I grew up in a very you conform to this family and environment, and so I have to really think and work at being myself.
Interesting. It's been costly. And
It does have a price tag.
so it's been costly for me. So there was hesitation, and I say was because I'm like hitting the stride now. I'm 50 and some change, so it's like stuff is to Jared's point earlier. Like when you get to a certain age, it's like I'm starting to feel that this is it, and so broken, damaged, lovely, all in between. This is who I am, and God loves me. I love me, and so I'm able to walk in that. But there's a cost to that, and I recognize that. And there has been in the past, the cost made me hesitant, but now it's like I view it as this is the cost that I have to pay, and I'm okay with that. So my perspective shifted. Nothing changed about
That's good.
what was required of me. It's just my perspective of it. It's like, okay, this is it. This is who God created. So I'm okay with it, and I have to live with that.
I would love to say,
And I'm willing to live with that.
yeah, I would love to say that I am there 100%, but I am not. There are times where there are still insecure moments that I have where I have to be so intentional with clinging to Jesus because I will then fall into comparison, which for me, I grew up as a performer, not singer. Yes, I sing, but I was taught to perform. And so for me, if I feel insecure, then my natural thing is to perform. And so yes, I've grown. I'm not 50, but I'm 40, and something about 42. 40 as well. It's less of a thing, but it's still a thing. Sometimes I'm surprised, like, yo, you are still dealing with this same thing.
Yeah.
That insecurity is real, but I know that I have to have a dependency on the Lord because my flesh is more natural to perform, so that people feel good about me, so I don't feel that I'm not good enough. So.
I would say sometimes isolation, because if you're authentic, maybe it makes you become isolated of yourself or makes you want to be isolated, because say if you start to understand, oh, I like doing XYZ, and objectively it could be good or bad, you can isolate yourself. Specifically in the cases of whether it's a certain habit, like for example, if somebody starts to like do running or recreational activity or whatever, or like I like to read books and nobody else resonates with that type of activity, and that's my authentic stuff that I'm engaging with, now becomes a part where, well, I see others and they don't resonate with that, so now I have to isolate in my authenticity. So you're still facing, all these things where it's like, oh, I feel alone, but at the same time, there's still a working that's occurring where you're authentic in that activity, which can produce fruit in of itself.
Yeah. Any others on that one?
Oh, one more. I am someone who needs to feel in control, because if I'm in control, then I know how to be in certain spaces. But over the past few years, the Lord has been inviting me to trust Him in the unknown, because then I have to depend on Him, and then I'm invited to be authentic in every situation. Honestly, even coming here, I'm the person that's like, who all gonna be there? Like,
That's what I said. I was like, who will be?
And I wanted to press in, and I didn't, because I know that I would be more likely to be overly prepared in a way that I'm just gonna say the right things. So yes, I wrote things down, but that's because I needed to sit with Keisha and her authentic thoughts, so that I didn't come here and perform out of insecurity.
That's a word right there.
That's good.
That's really good. Wow.
Very authentic of you.
Yeah. So what scares you about authenticity, if anything?
Could be rejection, because a lot of times if you're authentic, it's that sometimes more so it may not be while it is included with people rejecting, but maybe you're rejecting yourself, because if you're being so authentic or you want to be authentic, it's that fight and pull to reject that authenticity. So
I think
I'm gonna go this time. I'll let you go last time. I was actually going to bring up the point that you brought up, though. So oddly enough, I fear the responsibility sometimes, like the weight of it, like because there's a cost. So what does it mean for me to be authentic in this space? What's the price tag? What's the responsibility that comes along with that? That can be scary, and so for me personally, that is something that I consider. I consider the weight of it, and that can oftentimes be scary.
All right, so I'm tag teaming what you said and what you said. So I think I've identified, as we've been talking, I just zoned off for a quick second.
Welcome back.
I think that, so I said I fear responsibility, right? But I think what the real fear is isolation, right? Because if I show up as me, and most other people don't show up as I show up, that's a very lonely place to be. So I think sometimes it's easier to assimilate to what people want from you so that you can be a part of the crowd. Dan said this a few moments ago. We were made for community. Nobody wants to feel like they're not a part. Nobody wants to feel like that. I don't care who you are. Nobody wants to feel like that. I think we have different thresholds for that, for how much of that we can take, but nobody wants to feel like that.
Yeah.
And community should be the place where
You can.
where all this can show up.
Yeah.
Maybe that's idealist. I don't know, but
I also think there's a level of accountability that comes with authenticity,
Yeah.
because you are required to show up the same way every time, every place, whether it's at work, at church, at home. You have people around you that are going to look and say, hey, you're not the same person that you were at work as you are at church. So there's a level of accountability there that can be somewhat scary.
But now I have a question. I want to ask you, but I want to ask everybody.
Yeah.
Do you think that your authentic self can change based on the environment? I'm asking that on purpose, but yeah, what do you think?
I think so. I think there's different levels of authenticity, and not everyone deserves, the full authentic self,
Yeah.
right? Right. So I think there are areas that are reserved, for different people. However, inauthenticity begins when you are not demonstrating those same authentic characteristics. Your
core values.
Exactly.
beliefs, yeah.
yes, that's what I was going to say.
And I would also say that, if we really get to the nitty gritty of being true to yourself, as you begin to get older or self-reflect, and you realize there's certain characteristics about yourself that you actually find that you like, but society, or that it's against God's moral will. So then now you also have to deal with that. Like, hold on, I'm realizing I actually like this dark side of me, and that's actually being authentic.
Yeah.
Now, as a Christian, Christ calls you. Let's say, oh, okay, yeah, that's your sinful nature, right? I don't want you to embrace that. I want to draw you away from that. And then there's some people who are like, no, I'm gonna embrace that because I like it. So I think, particularly as Christians, that could be people realize that they don't like certain characteristics about themselves.
And I just to piggyback kind of off of what y'all are saying, it's so true because those who are close to me know that I'm going to show the love of Jesus, show the love of Jesus, show the love of Jesus. But I also have an issue with mirroring. So if I feel that you're coming off in a negative way to me, I can mirror that back to you. So it's like,
energy.
how are we showing up today?
What are we doing?
What are we doing?
Like, you tell me.
What we doing?
What we doing today?
Tell me what we doing.
And that's that battle within, because I know that I always should, no matter what, show that love. And but that's my authentic self too. It's like, if you probably don't remember this, back in LOC, like I got a shirt and Pastor Mike was there and he was like, I said, what you think about this shirt? And they said, I'm a little hood, I'm a little holy. That means pray for me, don't play with me. And
I love that. I love that.
but that is my authentic.
Big shirt.
That is me.
What were you gonna say?
Yeah, maybe it's getting older, but I think I used to get really frustrated when I could tell someone's not being true or authentic, and I just almost get mad at them. But I do think more and more there's a compassion for that, because the reality is the false, inauthentic self. There's a safety net there. There's a safety net of rejection. Like if they reject you, well, they're not really rejecting me. They're rejecting what I choose to put out there, whether you're aware of that or not. But if you really feel like you're putting out, there's no safety net anymore. It's like the fig leaves are gone. They're just seeing you. And if you get rejected for that, ultimately all you can do is say, it's me. That's
That's true.
I was asking about the environmental kind of aspect of it, of like, can it change? Because I'm an only child. So as an only child, one of the things that I've noticed about myself is when I walk through the threshold of my home, I become a different person. It's like all of the talkative, silly, crazy version of me that shows up publicly goes away. And what has been said about that before, people would say, what's wrong with you? It's like, there's nothing wrong with me. Like, I'm just not always, like, putting on the show. You know what I mean? Like, sometimes I'm sitting, my wife knows that, my kids know that, Now they are accustomed to me, so they don't require anything of me. But I think that like it's made me wrestle with. So then, which version of you is the most? Which one is the authentic version? Or are both of them who I am? And there's not anything evil
Right.
about that.
You're in process.
Yeah.
By the way, what would you say to a person who says, okay, I'm sold, even though there's a price tag and it can be terrible if we're honest, to your point, which is why we should be compassionate, because the most courageous thing you could ever do is show up and be you. It's people go, you need to just be yourself. 99% of people who say that ain't even themselves.
Yeah.
That's this on social media.
Yeah.
But if someone says, I've listened to this, and what are some practical steps I could take towards authenticity? What would you tell them?
I mean, I think first step is being honest with yourself,
Yeah.
right? Because I don't know that it works any other way, right? Because I think that the real war for authenticity is internal. I think it shows up externally, but I think it's internal, you know? Whether that is, even back to Dan's point, like whether that's choosing to be wise and serve somebody else, that's an internal battle. That really is, you know? And so I think it starts there, but I think also surrounding yourself with people who allow you to be in that process, you know, is completely necessary. People who will force you to continue the process when you want to retreat is completely necessary. Now, you may not get a lot of those people, but if you can find a person who does that for you, I think it's a win.
I think also asking the people that you trust what they encounter, what they think that our authentic self is, what it looks like, because what we think we might be doing or what we think it is, other people might not even be experiencing it.
Yeah.
I think a key part is it starts with knowing who you are. So identity's key. And when you know who you are, so that's going to start with your relationship with, I'm a Christian, it's going to be your relationship with God, but knowing who you are is the launch point. And most of us, even from this conversation, we probably can agree, when we start off, it's confusing because we're told who we're supposed to be, and then and as we matriculate and get older, then it's like, oh, we start to discover who we are. Then we finally put it together, and it's like, oh, this is who I am. So having a clear understanding of who you are first is where you begin that process.
I would even like to add on there, particularly as a Christian, because just like you said, we're told who we're supposed to be, and we live in a society that constantly lie to us. We constantly lie to ourselves when we're putting our persona on, depending on where we're at. I would say is, just like what you're saying, who did God create me to be? So who does God tell me to be? Who did my Creator created me to be, and how does He tell me to be? And in light of the environment that I'm in, how do I reflect that?
Yeah.
I think we're giving steps for someone exploring this. I would almost think like a culture's all about your go big or go home kind of thing. Like if you're going to be authentic, you need to go viral on social media. Everyone needs to hear your deep. I mean, test drive it. Like find someone that you'll see how it is, especially if it's a newer practice. See how that works. How do you and even grow from that? And I think. Yeah, sometimes I know we're going to talk about church, and I think sometimes we give the expectation if you're not being fully honest with everyone at the same level, you're doing it wrong. And I don't know if that's always helpful.
Yeah.
Remember, authenticity is not about an outcome. It's also a process. I would say take a year and get close to a few people, give them full immunity to tell you what they experience when they're in a relationship with you. Find some tools that can help get you insight to who you are. We are all familiar with tools like the Enneagram, Life Map, Emotional MRI, stuff like that. But to Dan's point, I would say I remember Pastor Jeremy said something during an Enneagram training. He wrote a quote, and I said, you need to share that. He said, self-awareness is a journey, not a destination. I would say authenticity is a journey, not a destination. Because someone's hearing it's like, oh, well, what do I do so I can just get there? It's like, we're as old as like 57 all the way down to 23, and we're like, I'm figuring some stuff out. Nobody's figured it out,
Yeah.
right? So I would say give yourself some patience, and to Dan's point, like, it doesn't have to be done publicly. As a matter of fact,
Probably should.
I think if you try to find this stuff publicly, you're not going to find it, because the peer pressure and the temptations, whether you're trying to, there's too much. There's too much bait for the false self. Any other practical things?
I would go ahead.
Yeah,
I'll go after.
Yeah, I was gonna say, for me, I would tell someone prayer and therapy. I was in therapy for 3 to 4 years before my therapist, the first one passed away, and then the second one just retired in April. Being able to ask me the questions that I wouldn't know to ask myself. I think getting professional help and someone who has tools and who will ask the hard questions about your childhood up until now is a practical step to take with learning how to be authentic. Because I don't think most people, they don't want to be inauthentic. It is self-preservation. It is survival.
Yeah.
Because we don't want to feel unworthy or rejected. And so it's a war.
And you need skill sets.
Yes.
With reality, like with everything.
Yeah.
Authenticity requires skill sets, and skill sets come from you mastering tools.
Yes.
So there's no authenticity without skills and tools, skill sets and tools, and those take time to learn.
Yeah.
So let's wrap this up with this. So what's one thing that's standing out to you the most about this conversation?
It's a courageous conversation. And these types of conversations create spaces for people to either continue in the journey or start the journey.
Yeah.
So I would call this a courageous conversation.
I think ultimately, no matter where you are, you said from 23 to 57, you are not alone.
Yeah. It's a journey and you've never arrived.
Yeah, that sounds like it's an ongoing process.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's the fact that we are all broken, we're all fractured, and the longer that you stay in that space, the longer you're going to be inauthentic. So you have to give yourself that time to heal and take that journey.
I think to piggyback on that, you have to give other people the space and the time for them to be authentic as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, it got so serious.
Your last question, all deep. Relax.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's a curious thing. It's a very curious thing, because those of us who come from a Christian perspective, it's very curious when we look at creation and we see two naked individuals.
Yeah.
No clothes, and then we fast forward into all of this stuff. It's so simple in one sense, Dan spoke about the young kid who just wants to run around naked, and they don't have it, they're just like, whatever. And then it's almost like we learn how to navigate our way through stuff. And then it's like we go through 3 phases. We're completely authentic. We cry when we're hungry. Our tummy hurts. Blah. And then we learn this is what I need to do to survive and fit in and get rewarded. And then as we get older, typically we start going, wait a minute, is that really me? Who am I? And now we're on that whole journey, right? There's like 3 phases. And that most adults are in that 3rd phase, somewhere in that spectrum. And we need to be compassionate, because everybody's there. But you're not a real friend if you accept anything less from your so-called friend than who they really are.
I agree.
And you're not a real friend if you're not willing to go through those seasons
Yeah.
when they're processing through all of their dark stuff. That's not a real friend. And you're not a real friend unless you're willing to not just wait at the finish line for the product, but willing to be there in the middle of their journey in their marathon, clapping for them. Said, let's go. I got you. And the reality of it is you ain't going to have a lot of dinner. If you got one,
You made it.
if you got two, if you got three, that's a lot. Because I don't think you can do authenticity alone, because authenticity is meant to be lived out in relationship. And so the encouragement is it's out there, it's a journey. You're not alone. But it's a beautiful thing, isn't it? To discover who we are.
Yeah.
Great.